Hello salmon fishing. Surely you have eaten a lot of this fish, right? Do you know the process of catching them? Today, let's see how fishermen catch them. Drift fishing is a popular method where the angler casts a line upstream, lets it drift down through the current or pool, and then reels it in to start the process over. You can cast from the bank or an anchored boat. In general, the idea is to weight your rig so that it bounces along the bottom, touching every foot or so, at roughly the same speed as the current. A larger weight will slow the lure's drift downstream, and a smaller weight will speed it up. The usual strategy is to work the entire process from the bank closest to you to the bank farthest from you and from the upstream end of the stream, near the end of the rapid, to the downstream end of the stream, near the beginning of the next rapid, figure 1. In crowded conditions, you may simply have to find your way into a line of anglers and fish right there, without moving. Cast upstream at a 30 to 45 degree angle and let the lure bounce along until you reach a 45 to 30 degree angle downstream. Reel and repeat. Your goal is to throw your bait to the bottom until a fish grabs it with its mouth. New anglers often have trouble distinguishing when a fish has taken the bait and when their rod is stuck on a rock. Over time, anglers will get a feel for the difference and know when to drop the hook and when to gently coax the rod off the rock. Typical drift fishing gear includes an 8.5 or 9 foot rod rated for 15 to 30 pound line and a bait casting reel or spinning reel. For larger fish, like Chinook salmon, use 20 to 25 pound line. For smaller fish, like pink salmon, use 10 to 15 pound line. There are countless weights, lures, floats, and/or baits that anglers can use. A standard trout setup typically consists of a stopper at the end of the main line, a 12 to 48-inch leader to a single hook with an egg ring, a cork on the line above the hook, and thread on the hook. For weight, push the stopper through a 3/4 length of rubber tubing and then push a pencil, lead into the tubing, or simply push the stopper through the paracord of the slinky. Weight, photos 2 and 3. Bait and/or scent can be added to this rig. Salmon eggs and sand shrimp are the most common baits to add to this setup, but many others can be used. In lieu of a cork and thread setup, you can also substitute a winged float, photo 4, or other type of drifting float for the cork or just the fish bait. You can also remove the weight and set up a cork and drift with a spoon or spinner, bouncing them along the bottom and slowly retrieving them. Drifting uses a similar setup to drifting, except that you cast the bait into a holding area or migration route and anchor it in one spot. Then, drift until a fish bites or you decide to change gear. Active lures such as winged floats, spoons, spinners, or quicks are often used when drifting in the current. Drifting can be done from shore or from an anchored boat. A very popular lure on the Columbia River is a quick wrapped with a sardine or other fish fillet. Use an 8.5 to 9 foot heavy rod. Your main line should be 40 to 60 pound monofilament or spectrum. At the end of the main line, thread your line through the end of a swivel or slider, add 4 to 6 beads, then tie on a swivel. Tie 4 to 6 feet of 40 to 60 pound monofilament leader to the other end of the swivel and then tie directly to the double locking pin on the quickfish. Tie an 18 to 30 inch length of 15 pound leader to the slider, or the swivel you threaded the main line through, and attach 1 to 8 ounces of lead. Most trout anglers use sizes K13 to K16. Use the larger sizes in slow water and the smaller sizes in faster water. Be sure to adjust your quickfish so that it is going straight as you pull it upstream through the water. If it dives to the left, turn the screw eye clockwise. If it dives to the right, turn the screw eye counterclockwise. Move the quickfish downstream until the weight is firmly anchored to the bottom and the quickfish is still swaying from side to side. Set your rod in the rod holder and do not attempt to set the hook until the fish has bitten. Allow the fish to pull the rod down into the water at least 3 times before attempting to retrieve the rod. Attach a lighter rod or a moderately powerful rod in smaller or slower rivers. The size of the line is appropriate for the depth and speed of the line. They can be fished with weights and small tubes if necessary, or you can simply sideline them in shallow water, i.e. fish without any additional weight.
Into this thing, these wheels turn, and it takes it to the gutting station.
They should be gently jigged back behind the boat until you reach your desired location, usually in 4 to 5 feet of water upstream of the rapids. These work best on lighter lines, around 15 pounds, and if you are fishing without weights, they work best when the line has a belly between the surface of the water and the rod tip. Spoons are effective for pink and coho salmon. Use smaller, 1/2 to 1.5 inches, pink, white, red, cherry or a combination for redfish. For coho, use a medium, 2 to 3 inch, digital with a silver or brass trim that can also be painted. Popular colors include light green, fluorescent pink, and fluorescent orange. Where you set up your rig in the river is a key factor in your game. On larger rivers, try to set up on an inside track where any fish migrating up that side are forced to pass that point. On smaller rivers, look for fish just above the source of the ridge. These are areas where the fish will be quiet after a storm has passed through the rapids. On slow flows in small rivers, work toward the main step and look for areas where the beat line starts to slow down a bit. On larger rivers or small rivers with high currents, work the edges where the river is not so fast. Remember that salmon migrating upstream are looking for the easiest route in the river, where there is enough cover to make them feel safe from predators. That hiding place could be deep water, logs, rock beds, bubble screens, or even white water in a canyon. Slide floats. Slide floats or floats are often used in slow or even stationary, level water stories like in a large eddy or tide at low tide. 10 to 12 rods are not floating rods. Spectra strings are preferred because they do not stretch and float. For floating fishing, use a slip float, photo 9, a swivel, some weight to pull the line through the float, and a 12 to 24 leader to the lure or lure. A float stop and small bead are used to set the float at the depth you desire. The float stop can be rolled over the guides as needed to make it easier to cast the spot. The float stop can be automatically tied with 15 to 30 dacron using a single knot. Very early in the morning, you may find the float fish on the bottom and want to set your float stop for your rig at the depth you think the fish are hovering at. As the sun hits the water, trout tend to move to the bottom and you should adjust the stop so that your shot is around a foot on the bottom. Professionals use rods longer than drift or trolling rods, and switch their main line to non-stretch spectra, see rig diagram. Regular slip setup, when fishing in the current, invite, fixing, the line. Fixing usually means lifting and or stringing the line to remove the belly and then the line is in a straight line. In between the rod and the float. The line needs to be adjusted to ensure a good club if it sinks. Spectra lines float and are easier to adjust, and they do not stretch, ensuring that the entire club is cast to the target or feint. Salmon eggs are the top choice for bait, although sand shrimp are popular for Chinook salmon. Some jig heads need to craft both at the same time. Marabou jigs can be used instead of the target and can be especially effective for pink salmon or other salmon when the water is very slow and clear. Diagram showing how to set up a legless herring rig. Photo by WDFW. Dribbling involves fishing from a continuous stream of successful casts. The caster will use power, diving, or a sinking float to reach the desired depth for their recreation or fishing. Freshwater drift fishing for salmon is primarily done in the lower reaches of larger, declining rivers such as the Columbia, where the river's tide slows or even reverses to allow the current to flow upstream. Standard drifting rods equipped with 20 to 25 pound line can be used for salmon fishing in rivers or bays. Setups typically include a 3-way swivel on the main end, a 12 to 36-inch drop and center strength 3-way swivel, and a 4 to 8 foot leader with a double hook and a jig or jig current and boat. The line used is usually lighter than the main line to let loose before the main line if the power is hit. Many anglers now use a swivel flash in line with their citation. Install the flash in line between the 3-way swivel and the shad, making sure the distance from the swivel to the flash is longer than the distance of the quality unwind line. The diagram in the picture shows how to set up a swivel flash in line with the shad. When fishing for spring Chinook salmon, try to stay close to the bottom, often quieting your fish. Fish at a depth that your fish finder shows fish for full Chinook and coho salmon. The bottom is always a good choice for Chinook salmon. For shad, you may not even need your answer number and can sometimes find material fish nearby. Trawl fishing can also be effective in places like the Columbia River estuary, Willapa Bay or Grays Harbor, and in extremely dangerous waters like the Nisqually River estuary. The salmon has a special place in the hearts of anglers all across the world. It's fully woven into the fabric of many North American cultures, thanks to its popularity as a food fish. But it's also made a name for itself further afield, inhabiting Scottish lochs, Russian rivers, Japanese bays, and beyond. And no matter where your angling adventure is taking place, trolling for salmon remains one of the most popular and successful ways to come face to gills with this species, looking to cover plenty of ground as you cruise your chosen fishery. Want to maximize the depths and distances your lines can reach? Trolling offers this in spades. It's the perfect way for salmon enthusiasts and newbies alike to increase their chances of hooking anything from big, feisty Chinook to lean, mean coho. Below, we've covered the types of salmon you can target, our top trolling spots, and what you can expect from this technique. Let's dive in. It goes without saying that there's a wealth of incredible salmon trolling spots across the globe. If you're in the US, chances are you have a good salmon fishery nearby, making it possible to stay local. Looking to hit up some of the most highly regarded locations? The Pacific Northwest is home to the Columbia River, Willamette River, and Oregon's Boy 10. Further south in California, you have the California Delta. Further east there are the Great Lakes, which can all be trolled. Lakes Michigan and Superior in particular are famous for their thriving number of salmon species. Canada also boasts strong salmon trolling opportunities. There's the mighty Kenai River, for one. You can also visit the salmon capital of the world, British Columbia, which is home to the Fraser River and other incredible salmon hotspots outside of North America. There are plenty of options. Russia's Kola Peninsula is one of the highlights. In the UK, Scotland's many vast lochs make for perfect trolling, especially the further north you go. Head to Scandinavia, especially Sweden, and you can target ocean salmon. Just wrap up warm.